In this video, I'm going to talk about a subtle but powerful block that many people have to find in their soulmate, and they don't even realize that they have it. This involves having something deep down inside of you that you're secretly afraid will make you unacceptable to an amazing person like your soulmate. So in this video, I'm going to talk about what this is, where it comes from, and how you can heal it so you can finally be with your soulmate. My name is Stefan Gonik. I'm an expert EFT practitioner, trainer, and founder of the Soulmate Attraction Academy from singletosoulmate.me, and this is Love Talk Q&A. So I'm going to start by telling you a quick story. I used to be in a therapy group a long time ago that I was in for 14 years, and we had this great therapist. And one day he brought up this new topic, and he called it the skeletons in the closet topic. And he said that what this means is that he felt like most people have what you can call a skeleton in their closet, that they're afraid makes them totally unacceptable to, to anybody they're in a relationship with. So it's like this secret, bad thing inside of them that if the person they're with finds out about it, it makes them so unacceptable that they'll just leave immediately. It's like, oh, I don't want to be with you anymore, right? And so everybody has this secret thing that they're ashamed of deep down inside. That's why he called it the skeleton in the closet. And it can make a person like really hide themselves, keep some distance in their relationship because they're afraid of being found out. It's like, if you really get to know me, really deeply get to know me, then you're going to dump me, as soon as you get to know these parts of me. So what he had us do is in the next week of our group, we were supposed to bring and share our skeleton in our closet, right? The thing that we're most afraid that if somebody knew this part of us, knew about this thing within us, that they would immediately reject us. So you can imagine the next week was a very scary week. Right? We all showed up. It was like, got to share my thing. So and then each person, when it was their turn, had a very similar experience. They started by being super uncomfortable and anxious and scared to share this thing. You could see sometimes they were like sweating, whatever it was, but they were like really awkward and uncomfortable. And they would finally get the courage to reveal this skeleton in their closet. And then they would get feedback from the group. And the universal feedback from the group was, what was such a big deal about that? You feel like this is some horrible thing about you that if anybody knows about it, they'll reject you. And it's like, it's not that big a deal. And in fact, we actually feel closer to you after you haven't shared it, right? So the end result is instead of rejecting you, we actually feel closer to you and like you more. And you can imagine this was a very healing experience for everybody in the group. To share this supposedly, horrible, unacceptable, unforgivable thing and to be very accepted and people feeling even closer to us and liking us more. Well, so he told us, though, this is something that most people have. And so, the rest of you, you're not in a therapy group. He's retired anyway. But this is the kind of thing I'm talking about that can make us hold back, can make us maintain distance. So because we don't want to be found out, we don't want to have this, unforgivable, terrible thing about us found out. And interestingly, it can be, if the fear is strong enough, it can make us avoid our soulmate completely for the following reason. If I'm with somebody like my soulmate, some amazing partner, and then that person finds out about this terrible thing about me and then dumps me, that's going to be a lot more devastating than if I'm with somebody who's like a medium partner. So, it's a medium good partner, but not an amazing partner. Right? The amazing partner, it's going to hurt no matter what, but it's going to hurt so much more with somebody as amazing as my soulmate. So subconsciously, I can be scared to even, go anywhere near my soulmate. And if my soulmate tries to talk to me, it's like, can't do it, right? Too scared. I might, may take a little while to recognize how wonderful the person is, but then I might start sabotaging myself like that because of this deep fear that, if you really get to know me deep down inside, you're going to reject me. So I don't want to risk that. So this can be a really big block. I think everybody has this to some degree. For some people, the block is not that big. And other people, it's really big. So, where does this come from? What are we talking about exactly? So there's two categories of things that this could be about. The most common one is that there are, in our family growing up, there are things that, due to our parents' issues, due to their childhood, that they're very uncomfortable with in anybody, right? And then they, because of their issues, because of their discomfort with some particular personality trait or characteristic, they act rejecting towards their child for having that trait. So let me give you an example. A common example of this actually is there are some people who are they're highly emotional, and they become accused of being too sensitive, right? So let's say often it's a little girl in the family, and a sibling will do something, and it'll really upset the little girl, and she'll cry and seek out her parents, comforting and support and things like that. And instead of being loving and caring, their own discomfort with emotions, due to how they were treated in their family, causes them to judge their child for being too sensitive. So, oh, you're too sensitive. It's not making such a big deal of things like that. So they act judgmental and critical and rejecting. And now the reality is that there's nothing wrong with the emotionality of this child. It's the parents' issue that's the problem, right? It's because the parents are uncomfortable with emotions that if they have an emotional child, they then judge that child as being too emotional, too sensitive, things like that. So they're rejecting some part of the child that's perfectly fine. And in all these cases, it's the same thing. They're rejecting some part of the child that's actually fine, right? So there's nothing wrong with that part of the child. It's just that the parents are uncomfortable with it. So then the child starts to feel like that part of them is not okay. And then they'll start to reject that part of themselves. And then they grow up feeling like this is a part of themselves that they have to hide. Like, I'll never forget when I met my wife to be. She was one of these, right? She was told by her family she was too emotional, too sensitive, and she hated her own emotionality, right? And she would try and suppress it and shove it down and apologize for it and all this different stuff. Whereas for me, as her potential partner to be, I really liked her emotionality. That was one of the things I found really attractive about her. But when we first got together, she was very self-rejecting around that. Now I was aware of that kind of thing, so I just kept reassuring her. I said, no, that's one of my favorite parts of you is your emotionality, right? And it took about a year of that before she finally started to feel better about her own emotionality, and then it stopped being an issue for her. So which is cool. But we because most of our parents have some issues from their parents and their parents before them, this tends to be a multi-generational thing, that there's some part of the personality of the child that gets rejected, and then the person rejects that part of themselves, and then that becomes that deep, dark secret inside, that skeleton in the closet. So that's one category. The other category is when somebody makes a mistake and does something bad. And it really is bad. It's a wrong thing. And we all do that, is the thing, right? We all make mistakes. We all do something that we recognize that, yeah, that was bad, right? It might be ethically bad, morally bad. It may be even illegal, right? Some kind of thing that we did illegally. And lots of times, once we did that bad thing, we feel bad that we did it. We kind of feel ashamed that we did it. And we kind of learn from our mistakes and we'll never do it again. And yet we find it really hard to forgive ourselves, even though, we're never going to do it again, right? And it becomes this deep, dark secret. I'm afraid that somebody will find out that I did this terrible thing, and it'll make me unacceptable, and they'll reject me, right, completely, immediately, right? So that's the second category, having done something that we think is unforgivable, that feels unforgivable inside. And again, that could be that deep, dark secret that makes us avoid our soulmate. Okay, so, what can we do about these things, and how can we heal them so that they're not a problem for us anymore? Because these are two very different kinds of things. So let's start with the family one, right? So where some part of us got rejected by our parents. So this one, ironically, is actually the simpler one, not necessarily the easier one, but the simpler one. What we want to do is try and remember early experiences of having that part of us rejected by our parents. So the example of, you're too sensitive, you're too emotional, you're too this, you're too that. Just try and remember some of the I like to do what I call first and worst. Try and remember the first time it happened. It doesn't actually have to be the very first time, but just what's the youngest time you remember. So you want to think of an example memory where that happened and heal that memory using EFT. It doesn't have to be EFT, but EFT is the fastest way that I know of healing memories. So you want to heal that memory, and then you want to think of a couple of the worst ones, that it happened when you're still relatively young, right? Like first half of your childhood. What were a couple of the worst examples of that happening? So it may, for instance, in the case of, you're too emotional, too sensitive, it might have been when a sibling did something really horribly, really big and bad, and it's like, wow, if if I deserve to cry, it'd be for that. And then to still get that same response, where you just feel like, but what they did was terrible, right? So anyway, whatever the reason, it's one of the worst memories that you have of that. So you want to heal the first, and then 2, 3, 4 of the worst. And once you do that, you then want to, you're gonna feel much less bad about that trait, right? So that's the first thing. You're gonna feel less bad about it, and you'll come to a place where it doesn't feel so bad. But we want to make it even better than that. You want to start to appreciate that part of you, because remember, in every case where a family member or parent, rejects some part of you, that's actually, there's nothing wrong with that part. That part is actually a good part of you. So like being emotional, there's nothing wrong with it. That's actually a good thing. There's a lot of people who are very unemotional, and that's not so good either, right? So being emotional is good. It's who you are. So you want to start tapping on appreciating that part of you. So for instance, with the emotional thing, somebody who feels their emotions strongly feels all their emotions strongly, including the positive ones, right? Joy, excitement, happiness, love, things like that, right? So other people who are less emotional, maybe they don't cry very easily, which, is the thing that you feel like got rejected, but they also don't feel the same level of joy that you do, the same level of excitement, the same level of open-hearted love. I actually envy my wife's ability to feel that. I'm more even-keeled emotionally, but she feels all of her feelings really intensely, including all the really positive ones. It's like, wow, I wish I could feel my feelings the positive ones that strongly, right? So there's some really big benefits to being very emotional. So, but whatever this part of you is actually something good. It's not something bad. You just became to believe that it was bad because of your parents rejecting that part, but it's actually a good part. So what you want to do is get in touch with what's good about it, right? And tap on that. So you go from feeling less bad about that part of you to starting feeling really good about that part of you. So once you do that, that's going to be huge, because you're no longer going to feel like this part of me is rejectable and I have to hide this part of me. Okay, so that takes care of the the family origin thing. Now let's say though it's the case where you did something bad, and it really was bad. So this one is trickier. You need to do a tapping process to help you forgive yourself for it, right? Now, interestingly, when you think about EFT, what's the main concept of EFT is that you want to tune into your feelings and negative energy and focus in on it and even exaggerate it while tapping so as to release it. Right? So the goal is to release this negative energy. So what you want to do is you want to start by emphasizing how bad it is, the thing you did. So even though I did this terrible thing, you could even exaggerate it, make it even worse than it was, right? Even though I did this horrible, terrible, unforgivable thing, I deeply, profoundly love and accept myself anyway. In fact, even though I don't feel at all loving and accepting about myself around this thing, I deeply and profoundly love and accept myself with kindness and compassion. Even though I did this horrible, terrible thing, I deeply and profoundly love and accept myself anyway. And then you start by focusing on the negative energy. I did this horrible, terrible thing, and you name what it was, right? I stole such and such from whoever. And you keep tapping, emphasizing how bad it was. It was horrible, it was terrible, it was unforgivable. And I can never forgive myself for this. I'll never forgive myself. In fact, I refuse to forgive myself for this. You want to really emphasize the negativity, right? And that's going to help loosen it up. So you might think that, what am I doing? That feels uncomfortable. I feel like I'd be reinforcing it. Well, remember, EFT is about releasing negative energy. So the best way to release it is to get into it, express it more strongly as you're tapping to help release it. So anyway, you do a whole bunch of tapping on that. And it may take a while because these things can be deeply embedded. So you do a whole bunch of tapping about how horrible it was, how unforgivable it was, how you refuse to, I refuse to forgive myself for this. I can never forgive myself for this. It's the worst thing that anybody's ever done in the world. And you can even see that the exaggeration is helpful because not only does it help bring out the feelings more, but the absurdity also starts to make you go, well, inside, you kind of go, well, it wasn't that bad. It was bad. It was like the worst thing that anybody's ever done in the world. Well, not that bad, of course. So anyway, as you'll notice, if you keep tapping on the negative as negatively as possible, after a while, you'll notice that you're starting to have these internal objections like, well, wait a minute, it's not that bad, like that. Things will start feeling like they're loosening up inside of you. And this is good. So then you want to start shifting towards recognizing that we all make mistakes. Yeah, it was bad. Yeah, it was a mistake. And we all make mistakes. Making mistakes is human. Everybody has made mistakes like this in their life. And if you question yourself, even if you weren't even thinking about that example, more the childhood family one, I bet you have something that you regret, that you did that you greatly regret. And if you tune into it, you might notice that, I don't know if I've ever forgiven myself for that, really. So you might need to do this process too. So anyway, you just want to start, being a member of the human race and recognizing that, everybody has made some kind of mistake that's like this, that they greatly regret, and that they have a hard time forgiving themselves for. And so, hey, I'm part of the human race. I'm a member of the same club as everyone else. And then you want to start acknowledging that, I'm never going to do this again. I did it. I learned from it. I've never done it since, and I never will do it. And then you say, I can forgive myself. No, I can't forgive myself. It's too hard. Well, maybe I can forgive myself. No. You can't go back and forth. I can't forgive myself. Well, maybe. What if I could forgive myself? So you kind of work your way towards forgiveness, and you sort of end with, I choose to be a human being and forgive myself for that bad act, knowing that I'm not going to do it again. And it makes me less likely to do other things that are bad as well. So I choose to forgive myself. I choose to have compassion for the fact that I'm part of the human race, that we all make mistakes, and I'm not going to make that mistake again. And others like it, right? So anyway, there's this. So the forgiveness process is a really powerful thing to do. I highly recommend people doing it. Sometimes it's hard to do on our own, so sometimes we have to do it with somebody else, but it's a great thing to do. So if you do that, though, you've cleared out that skeleton in your closet, that thing that you're afraid makes you completely unacceptable, makes people, make somebody reject you if they find out about it. So that would be, once you've done that, you're going to feel way better. So if you have both these things or one of them, if you clear that out, you're not going to have the skeleton anymore, and you're not going to be afraid of being rejected anymore. And that block to find your soulmate is going to be removed, which will make it that much easier to find your soulmate. Now, this is not the only block that we can have around finding our soulmate. And on my website at singletosoulmate.me, I have this free mini course called The 3 Secrets to Attracting Amazing Love, which talks about the 3 key blocks to finding your soulmate and how to break free from them so that you finally can be with your soulmate. And this block that we were just talking about is one small piece of one of those 3 kind of categories of blocks, really, that I talk about in the mini course. So there's the rest of that block, and then there's the other 2 key blocks as well. So I invite you to come to my website at singletosoulmate.me and get this free mini course, which it's going to really help you clear everything out so you can finally be with your soulmate. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, it would really help me and other people to find it if you would take a quick second to like the video. I invite you to subscribe to my channel to get my latest videos about EFT and finding your soulmate. And I encourage you to keep tapping, and I'll see you on the next episode of Love Talk Q&A.